Last season, Lamar Jackson won his second MVP, making him the third player in the NFL with multiple, joining Aaron Rodgers, who has 4, and Patrick Mahomes, who has 2. All 3 have top 8 odds to win it again. There are 12 different guys with better than plus 3,000 odds, all of which are quarterbacks. Christian McCaffrey has the best odds for a non-quarterback at plus 4,000, and then there are some guys at plus 3,000 with a shot: Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and Matthew Stafford. Richardson is expected to make a big jump in year 2, and that's been a trend for MVP in the past. He only played in 4 games as a rookie before he suffered an AC joint sprain. The Colts went 9-8 without him, so there is a lot of potential there. Lawrence has a lot to prove this season. He hasn't exactly lived up to the generational talent hype, but he also hasn't been bad. He's still got a 5-year, $275 million extension, but he better hope the Jaguars don't regret it. Then Stafford is now 36, but was good last season. He had 24 touchdowns to 11 interceptions and led the Rams to the playoffs. All 3 guys at plus 3,000 certainly have potential, but there's a reason their odds are so low. But as for the top odds, there are some players you'd expect, but also some that will surprise you. Patrick Mahomes has the top odds at plus 450. No surprise there. He's the best player in the league and has already won MVP twice, in 2018 and in 2022. Plus, Mahomes just won his 3rd Super Bowl. We may legitimately never see another player as good as him, and the Chiefs will probably be really good again. His top target, Travis Kelce, is back, and so is Rashee Rice. Add in Marquise Brown and rookie Xavier Worthy to the equation, and yeah, he's probably the frontrunner for MVP for a reason. Surprisingly, Josh Allen hasn't won an MVP. It really does feel like he's the single biggest reason the Bills' offense has been good. And now the real test for him is going to come post Stephon Diggs. Buffalo is going to have to rely on Khalil Shakir as the number 1 wide receiver. The Bills did just draft Keon Coleman, but it's a lot of meh after that. Luckily though, Dalton Kincaid is there at tight end. Allen has really carried the Bills' offense in recent seasons, but it's going to be different this season. He might have to do it all, and if he does, he deserves an MVP. And he actually has the same odds to win MVP as Diggs' new quarterback. CJ Stroud has an even better team around him this season, a lot thanks to Stephon Diggs, who the Texans traded for back in April. Stroud had such a good rookie season. 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year and is poised for a big jump. He also has some other good pieces around him like Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Houston should be good again, and Stroud would be a big reason why, so he could definitely be a good bet for MVP. Joe Burrow is fresh off of a disappointing season because of a torn ligament in his wrist. He hurt it in week 11 and missed the rest of the year on injured reserve. The Bengals weren't that great before he went down. Cincinnati was 5-5, and Burrow had 15 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He has some studs around him though, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and the Bengals also just drafted Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round. The injury leaves some concerns for Burrow, but he has plus 900 odds to win MVP, and there's a big drop off after him. Following his first season starting, Jordan Love has plus 1,400 odds to win NFL MVP. He had 3 years to sit and learn behind Aaron Rodgers, and it clearly paid off. He was great. The Packers made the playoffs and even beat the number 2 seeded Cowboys. Love passed for 4,100 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. He should only keep getting better. His weapons aren't necessarily amazing, but they are young. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. There's no real stars there, but they are some good receivers. And Luke Musgrave is there at tight end. Lamar Jackson has the same odds as Jordan Love and Brock Purdy to win MVP, which is kind of odd. He just won his 2nd MVP, with his first coming in 2019. He's probably the greatest mobile quarterback in NFL history. Last season, he passed for 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, and he rushed for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. Lamar is the Ravens' offense, and you'd expect him to be good every season he's healthy. The odds for him for MVP are way too low. There's honestly a good argument that he's the 2nd best quarterback in the league behind Mahomes. Yes, Brock Purdy has the same odds as Jordan Love and Lamar Jackson, but remember, he did have a chance to win it last season. There was plenty of controversy around him and whether or not he actually deserved the MVP. He is loaded with weapons around him: Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. The Niners have just been so good, and Purdy has definitely benefited from having good players around him, but he's also been good too. He had 4,280 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions last season. The 49ers made it all the way to the Super Bowl, but again, lost to the Chiefs. It wouldn't be too surprising if the 49ers found their way back to a championship soon, and Purdy could be a big reason why. If there's a guy in the NFL that knows something about winning MVP, it's Aaron Rodgers. He sat behind Brett Favre for 3 seasons, who won MVP 3 years in a row. Rodgers then won his first in 2011, did it again in 2014, and won back-to-back in 2020 and 2021. Of course, those were all with the Packers. Now he's 40 years old and on the Jets, and fresh off of an Achilles tear. It's certainly a long way up for Rodgers now, but he has good odds. We never really got to see what he'd look like on the Jets, and he's going to have some good weapons around him. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and now Mike Williams. The Jets have put some good pieces around him, but the question is, does he still have enough gas in the tank? Regardless, he has decent odds at winning MVP at plus 1,600, the same as Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. If there's a single player who has a ridiculous amount of talent around him compared to Brock Purdy, it's probably Jalen Hurts. He broke out in 2022, but threw 9 more interceptions last season. But he did throw for 3,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, and rushed for 600 yards and 15 touchdowns. Shout out to the tush push. He was still good last season, but the Eagles declined quite a bit. There's still some insane talent around him, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and now Saquon Barkley, but it'll be interesting to see how the offensive line and specifically the tush push fares without Jason Kelce. It really did feel like Dak Prescott was so close to winning MVP last season. He led the league in passing touchdowns with 36 and only had 9 interceptions, plus added 4,500 yards passing. CeeDee Lamb had a career year, 1,750 yards and 14 touchdowns on a league-leading 135 receptions. Add Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson, plus the band is back together now with Ezekiel Elliott returning to Dallas, and the Cowboys are good. They just can't perform in the playoffs for some reason, but will probably be back, a lot in part to Dak. Justin Herbert has plus 2,000 odds to win MVP this season. Last season was super disappointing. He ended up missing 4 games and broke his finger. Plus, he was 5-8 and had 3,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Even worse, the Chargers' offense now is definitely worse. No more Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, or Austin Eckler. It's going to be Joshua Palmer as the #1 receiver, with Quentin Johnston, who had a pretty rough rookie season, still there, and second-round pick Ladd McConkey. It's really a new era in Los Angeles. Brandon Staley is gone, and it's Jim Harbaugh's time. He's fresh off of a national championship in Michigan and knows what it takes to be an NFL head coach and even make it to the Super Bowl. Tua Tagovailoa has a lot to prove this season. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Jalen Hurts all got huge contract extensions, but Tua hasn't. Sure, Tua's been good, but you have to be great when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle with Mike McDaniel running the show. Last season, Tua passed for a league-high 4,624 yards and had 29 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. The Dolphins went 11-6. He's a good player, but there's questions about how much he's actually worth, and it's fair. Tua hasn't done enough, but an MVP sure would help. If he won MVP, he'd probably get a nice big contract to go with it, but he has the 12th best odds for a reason. It could happen, but there are plenty of other players expected more of. But it is the NFL, so you never know who could win MVP.